Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Quiet Gardener with Rose, and I am Rose. So today, on this episode, I thought I'd talk about some disturbing statistics that I have recently run across in my online reading. Um, yeah, and it's really alarmed me, and it probably will alarm you too. And I don't know the answers as to how to deal with this, but this is kind of what um, the people who do the research are saying right now. So today's topic is about young women and the health disparities that were present in terms of diagnoses of diseases and illnesses, and how now those numbers are really shifting. So it's really alarming. And so I ran across a number of articles, and I'm sure if you do a search on young women and health statistics, you can find these same articles, and I will try to list them, the ones that I just came across and have used here in the notes here, the show notes. But I came across a number of articles that were talking about the incidences of certain diseases and illnesses and conditions are increasing significantly for young women. In fact, those numbers are surpassing the numbers for young men. So, oh, that was shocking because historically, in general, men have typically not fared as well as women in terms of disease diagnosis and death and longevity and all of those things. Women have tended to be healthier, have less problems, live longer, etc., etc. But apparently that is changing. And I can't really tell you why, but it is. And so let me talk to you about a few of the articles that I found. And the sources here are just what came up on my web browser. I have no investment in any of these particular sources, and I'm sure most of them are, or not all of them, are probably liberal, slanted sources. So let me just say that. But I will put the information in the show notes. Um, so one of the things I found, the first one, and this was from April of this year, 2025. And it was ABC News, and the headline was Young Women Now Binge Drink More Than Young Men. Hmm. Wow. Like, why? So that was very bizarre. But apparently, from the ages of 18 to 25, that age bracket is what they're looking at. Women are now binge drinking much more frequently or at a higher percentage than young men. And for binge drinking, they define that for women as having four or more drinks in one sitting, which is a lot. And so they didn't really say why this might be. They didn't really have any explanation. They just said it is a fact in terms of the surveys or however they found this data. And I don't know how. You can go to the ABC News article and look at whatever research they quoted. But young women are binge drinking more than young men. Now, we're all accustomed to the frat boy mentality, right? Young people, you go away to college, you party, you drink. Usually it's associated with males and fraternities and partying and all that stuff. Women do that too, obviously, but it's never been seen as women who are the majority of the people doing that. And apparently now it is. Who knew? So that's a alarming article. And so let me go over the other articles before I give my opinion on these things. CNN published a article January of 2025 that says young women are almost twice as likely to be diagnosed with cancer as young men, any type of cancer. And then they added that middle-aged women now have a slightly higher risk than males, a slightly higher risk than males, but the biggest discrepancy was seen between young people. So young women are almost twice as likely to be diagnosed with any kind of cancer than young men. Now, in terms of women, most cancers in women are breast and thyroid cancer. They actually give a list of possible contributors from their research, whoever they referred to in this article. And that would include fertility issues. So they are saying that because women are waiting later in life to have babies or not having babies at all, that's then they have a higher risk of cancer because having babies and breastfeeding is associated with a lower risk of cancer, certain cancers at least. All right. So, women's lack of reproduction and breastfeeding is contributing to this, along with obesity and alcohol. Now, we just referenced alcohol in the prior article, which said women are drinking a lot more than young men. So, there's that. So between the drinking, the being overweight, and the not having babies and breastfeeding, women are not looking good here. So that's what that article had to say. There's another article from NPR, which we all know is a fairly left-leaning publication. And even if you didn't know it before now, you know it now because they also cite that the cancer diagnoses are rising amongst young women, and this was in January of 2025 when they published this article. But they give an explanation, and the explanation as to why is racism. Number one, racism. Everything with NPR. So yeah, I'm not a fan of NPR. Yeah, they tend to find racism in every single disparity. Now, you could argue that there is a race difference between people who get diagnosed at a certain point in their illness and treatment. And yeah, because there's a disparity, excuse me, in healthcare, which isn't necessarily because of racism. It might be because of SES, which I find that most things that people equate to racism have to do more with your socioeconomic status in this country, right? So if you have money or you have health insurance or whatever, you're probably more likely to go to doctors and get diagnosed with things versus if you didn't. If you didn't. So according to them, it's all racism though. Um, but the bottom line of it is that regardless of race, younger women are having higher incidences of cancer than younger men. No matter the race. Doesn't matter. The SES even. The bottom line is that the younger women are having more higher incidences of cancers than the younger men. And that is a genetic issue, right? That is a biochemical genetic issue that these things don't know what race are, right? So that's a concern. And then there's a couple of others. There's a healthday.com, which is some kind of website that I found, a healthline.com, another website. And they both published similar articles in March of 2025 that basically said that chronic stress boosts the stroke risk in young women as opposed to young men. All right. So this is significant. They're basically saying that chronic stress significantly increased the risk of stroke for young women, but did not do the same, meaning that if younger men had chronic stress, they did not have a significantly increased stroke risk. Okay? And so their findings were that moderate stress increases the stroke risk by 78% among women in the age groups of 18 through 49. Moderate. There's a higher risk for women who experience moderate stress versus those who experience high stress, which is interesting. So, chronic moderate stress led to a higher stroke risk for younger women. High chronic stress did not lead to an increase, which is interesting. Now, In these two articles, they also said that moderate or high stress did not increase stroke risk for young men or even middle-aged men. So I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, that's what it says. And so they do note that stressors for young people that may contribute to this, which I'm sure they contribute to this, include work and finances. And then also with women add the other responsibilities of caretaking, raising kids, all the traditional roles that women are supposed to fill. So that's what they concluded. So, I mean, I could go on, and I did not go on and on because it's supposed to be 20 minutes. But you can find lots of articles online that talk about how young women are suddenly at higher risk for all these illnesses and diseases, are having more problems with addictions, et cetera, et cetera. And we would have to ask why? Why? Why is that? And I don't know the answer, obviously. I am not a researcher. I am not a scholar of these things. I only have opinions. And I can tell you what seems commonsensical that I can conclude from this is that the more that women have vied for equality with men in all areas of life, the worse off they become health wise. Yikes. So make of that what you will. But at the end of the day, if women, I guess, want to be equals to men, that means that they are equals or actually surpassing men on things that are not necessarily desirable. And so, yeah, I think I'm not saying that women shouldn't strive to be successful, but I think you have to kind of stop and temper all of that drive and desire for for success and this quote unquote equality, which to me is just a figment of modern day society because men and women are very different. We have different roles. We were created for different purposes. So there's that. But there is a trade off for everything. And so if you want to be, you know, operate as your male counterparts out in this world, then that comes with a price. And I think you really have to think about the price you're willing to pay for all of that. And is it really worth it at the end of the day? So I think as women, as young women, I will say young women because not me, not an older woman, but young women are so preoccupied with trying to be the equals of men, trying to do everything men do and do it as well or better than them, that they're kind of missing out on this concept that we weren't created to be equals. We were created to be complementary, in my opinion. And so that, is something to ponder. If you want to be an equal, it comes with a trade off. And you have to think about, are you willing to sacrifice the trade off? You can't have it both ways. You can't be treated like a woman who is a traditional woman and expect the same things from men, but yet want to be their equals or their bosses, even worse. You want to be higher than the men, right? In terms of status and the respect that you garner from them and from whoever else. Um, so you can't have it all, is the bottom line. None of us can have it all. And that goes for men and women. And so you, as an individual, have to decide where you want to draw the line in terms of what's enough. And so I would encourage young people to really think about that. Is competing with men and being better than men worth the health consequences? Is it worth the consequences to whatever fantasy lifestyle you thought you might have, be it husband, children, family, all of that? Are you willing to forgo all of that? Um, you can't have it all. So if you want a masculine male, a masculine dominant, and I don't mean dominant in the sense of abusive, I mean dominant in the sense of a masculine male, um, then you can't be necessarily a boss chick, or at least you ain't gonna be one at home. I can tell you that because two bulls is not gonna work out. And so, are you able to turn it off and on? Are you able to turn your aggressiveness, masculine energy, dominance, whatever you want to call it in this day and age, are you able to turn that off and on? Most people aren't. Most people can say, most women will say, oh, with the right male, I'm able to just bring out my submissive feminine side. There's no right male talking about. Bottom line is if you are something or you aren't, whether a male is there or not, your nature is your nature. You are who you are. And so that is something that you have to ponder in terms, are you willing to make that trade-off? Because if you are a dominant, aggressive woman, most likely you're not going to end up with a dominant, assertive, aggressive male. It just won't work. Somebody has to submit, somebody has to lead. It's the way that works. And so I have found that a lot of women, younger women, older women even, go on and on about how they can be submissive with the right male, which is ridiculous to me. Either you have the capacity to be submissive as a female with a male, or you don't. And if you don't, you will probably end up with a male, but he'll probably be a beta or a passive male. And if that's what you want, go for it. But I can tell you, most women that I've encountered who have males like that are at the end of the day dissatisfied because most women at the end of the day don't respect a passive man, right? So most women at the end of the day will not respect or follow a passive or submissive man. He may allow you to do what you want, say what you want, do what you want, lead the relationship, be the boss chick, whatever title you want, but at the end of the day, you probably won't respect him. And when you don't respect him, you're more likely to disrespect him. And you are also more likely to go outside of your marriage to seek that fulfillment of having that strong masculine figure in your life. So these are all things as women we have to think about. Young women, you especially need to think about because you have time. Right? You have the chance to reverse all of this nonsense before you make vital mistakes in your life and in your relationships. Some of us older women have had to learn certain things by trial and error, which I have, and have had to adjust over time. Now, I have a couple of minutes left, so I'll just add a snippet about me because I try to share my experience so that it doesn't sound like I'm just like sitting here preaching to people about what they should do. It's not that. It's a matter of I have been there and done that. It made all the mistakes, which would probably explain why I'm single here, 53 years old. When I started out as a young woman, I was a assertive woman in the sense that I was a career woman. So I was focused on education and career, which I achieved. Um, Great things in terms of from where I came from and in terms of the level I've achieved, given my family history, my life history, the expectations of a person like me. So I've done all those things, but with that came, and this was not my nature. My nature was not to be aggressive or assertive. I am, as I like to call myself, an extroverted introvert. And I had to learn to be that. So I grew up being very shy, very reserved, very introverted, very submissive. That is my personality. But as I went through life, education, career, I had to learn to be more assertive and more outgoing. And so I learned to do that. Unfortunately, what happened was once I started learning to do those things as a young woman, it transferred to all of my relationships, to my whole life. It became who I was. And so I was that way all around. And people, even if I wasn't that way, even if I wasn't being actively assertive or aggressive, I think men in particular perceived me as being a very assertive woman. And so that limited the type of men who would be attracted to me. And no, it wasn't weak men are afraid of assertive women. No, that's BS. That has nothing to do with it. Bottom line is assertive men, masculine men aren't trying to deal with it too complicated. They're not trying to deal with no BS. They want a woman who is going to be on board with them and who is going to be a smooth process with. They don't want to sit and argue about things. And so, even though I wasn't at my core an assertive or an aggressive woman, that's still what came across because that's what I had to be out in the world. And so that limited the type of men that were drawn to me to men who were more passive, who were more, as I would call them, beta males. And that tended to be what I attracted. So as an older woman, once I figured that out, it took me a while to figure that out. I had to just tap into that side of me that was very feminine and that was more submissive and that was more willing to be led by a masculine man. And I managed to do that. But that took me a lot of effort, a lot of introspection, a lot of changing things about myself and how I operated out there in the world. I mean, it took a lot of work to get to that point. Um, and I've gotten to that point. So it's a beautiful thing because now I'm at a point which is not automatic. It takes a lot of effort and time, or I'm able to use those different assets in different situations. So meaning that in, my work life, my business life, I have to be assertive. There's no way around it. And I'm able to do that, and that's fine. And I do that there. But I don't have to do that outside of that area of my life. I don't need it to be consistent across the board. And so when I'm outside of my professional life, that gets turned off because that's not the authentic, natural me. So that gets turned off, and I am just more quiet and soft and more of the introverted girl that I was from the beginning. And so it really is a beautiful balance. And so all of that to say, there is a trade-off for everything. And so, if you're a young woman out there and you're trying to keep up with the big boys and trying to do all these things as an independent woman by yourself, with yourself, it comes at a cost. And this is just one cost, the health risk, the higher increase in health problems. There are many costs I could go into, but we'll say that for later videos. So that's all I have to say on this topic. And so let me know what you think about it. You don't have to necessarily agree wholeheartedly with what I have to say, but this is just my opinion. And these are just my experiences as I've gone through this life. So until next time, bye bye.